good shape.
Is more on
We're just going to cover the green pod
pod.
part of the report and the ask. And the report's called Reduce Nuclear Risk, Protect Communities. And next slide.
Talk loudly, Scott, please.
All right, so mainly the Green Pod is trying to keep the focus on increasing cleanup spending by the government. So we need to increase it. I mean, there's just some great, well, there's a lack of funding for cleanup issues. This kind of shows the environmental, the request is $7.6 billion this year. And these numbers are, but when you look at compared to weapons, and these numbers keep getting bigger and bigger. So, and we used to say clean up, don't build up. And so that's where we are. And this is just kind of just an outtake from the budget, and just showing the different sites. And so all these numbers are available, so you can look for your site and see how much it's gone up or down. You know, a lot of these numbers have gone down since last year. This is a 27 request, the actual 26 enacted. And so this is just you don't need to remember these numbers, but there's a lot of minuses here, and we need to keep on the case to get more cleanup funding. All right. And this is a kind of a targeting the Hanford site, and the amount that they.
Do you want me to do this one, Scott?
Yeah.
Okay. So at Hanford, we have this life cycle report that shows how much money every year they need to keep cleanup on track. So this red line is how much they need to actually do compliant cleanup, like what legal documents say you have to do this or you will not make the deadlines, you will be behind, you will never clean up the site. So this is where we are now. We need 6.76 billion. That's how much you need. This is how much they were cutting the funding to 2.82 billion, so
A third.
yeah, not as much as we need. So we need 3.94 billion that we don't have, just for Hanford. And we get most money of all the nuclear weapons cleanup sites. So this just is a pretty stark example of every year you don't get the money, it just takes cleanup forever. You never finish it because you're just babysitting waste. And the babysitting piece is in the report too, but the basic idea is you can't just leave waste and not do, like, you have to monitor it, you have to pay people to monitor it. So you're either paying people to watch the waste, babysit it, or you're cleaning it up and then it's off the books. So that's kind of the idea. Yeah.
Thank you. This is a, oh. And this just shows the other, I mean, there is money out there for cleanup budget, but, you know, our, some of these are,
I think there's one slide back, Scott. There we go. Sure, I can do it.
Thank you.
So not just more money, but well-managed money is really important because you can throw money, as we see, the
Yes.
federal government, and guess what? It doesn't do anything. So the well-managed part's important. So for the total cost of cleanup in 2015 was 475 billion, and now it's jumped up to 1.032 trillion. So this is the effect of babysitting waste. Every time you don't fund cleanup where it needs to be, it gets more expensive just continually, unless you do shortcuts. You don't want shortcuts. Shortcuts are things like leaving waste in the ground, not cleaning it up, saying it's good enough, increasing exposure limits and saying like, well, if you leave more waste, people get sicker, but we don't want that. Also, we have a whole thing about innovation missions, so the new administration is really pushing new nuclear and taking the focus away from cleanup to this new nuclear renaissance. And we're saying, don't do innovation, do cleanup. So more cleanup, less shortcuts. And then this is an example from Los Alamos where DOE wants to cap and cover a waste, which means to just put a cap over it, which would keep rainwater from pushing contaminants into the ground. Doesn't really do much versus digging it up and dealing with it. But New Mexico is saying, no, you have to do an excavation, which is $790 million more than DOE is planning for. And now DOE is delaying it until at least 2080. Will we be alive then? Probably not. Maybe some of us. So this just means like every time you're delaying, you have a shortcut plan, the state requires more, you're delaying it. It just means that the cost is going to go up. Yeah, I think that's, yeah.
And then this is just a breakout of some of the cleanup budgets, and
this, if in the report that we have this figure in here, and if you click on this, it goes to a slideshow presentation that they gave the boards, the Environmental Management Site-Specific Advisory Board. So it's a more recent like overview if you want to see more of the slides. But this is also just to show you where in the report you can read more about this. And then this is just from the state of Washington. Consistent, compliant funding will save taxpayers billions in the long term, complete cleanup decades sooner, and reduce the chance of a contamination release or infrastructure collapse. Which is really, if you need like talking points about that, it's like, do you want more contamination going in the environment? No. Do you want infrastructure collapse? No. That's why we have to get these projects off the books.
thank you, Diane.
Okay, so the next one. Our goal, our ask, is to protect the existing environmental laws. They're already really not strong enough, but of course this administration is trying to weaken them. So the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which regulates and supposedly regulates and licenses commercial nuclear facilities, and the Department of Energy, which just goes ahead and promotes and builds nuclear weapons and other nuclear endeavors. Both of those agencies are in the process of reducing the existing inadequate protections. So that's one of the things that we're calling on our elected officials, is to rein in those two agencies. And then the other is to retain the ban that the Department of Energy had to prevent radioactive metal from being deliberately released into commercial recycling and into regular garbage so that they can make money on selling off contaminated metal. And I was having a hard time getting the documentation on that and found out that in fact we did lose this one. There was a Federal Register notice May 15th, 2025, which I finally tracked down, and they've reversed these two bans on radioactive metal recycling. So part of our message, if you have time in your meetings and it's something that is of concern and interest, is to let your legislators know that you support the continuation of the previous bans on radioactive metal, bans on letting nuclear waste out from DOE into regular garbage and into recycling. So the next one. Next. So under Executive Order 14300, Trump's executive orders from May of 2025, he had a whole bunch of things that the nuclear establishment was supposed to do and redo the whole NRC regulatory code. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission came into being in 1974. And so over that time, regulations have been established under 10 CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations. Now, this new staff, they got rid of most of the senior staff, so they've got new energetic people who have no real sense of the dangers that could happen, rewriting the code. And they've broken it down into about 25 different sections. They took the whole code and they're just blasting through and redoing it. So we have a coalition that is formed.
The Coalition to Stop Radioactive Pollution.
Yeah, we're calling it Protect Better, Coalition to Stop Radioactive Pollution. And we're working specifically on one of those changes, which is to the radiation standards. So the radiation standards are 10 CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, 20. And when I first got to NIRS, Nuclear Information Resource Service, in 1986, people like Dr. Carl Morgan from Tennessee and Bob Alvarez from here in DC encouraged me to fight the changes to the 10 CFR 20 back then. Back then, they weakened the regulations. I worked on it for about 8 years, and then we ended up having higher allowable exposures, releases into air and water. And they say that the dose is the same, but the dose was actually higher because they recalculated how you define dose. So it's clever little things. So what this current round does is to change that code and actually potentially increase the dose that's allowed to the public from 100 millirems to 10 rems, which is 10,000 millirems. Maybe they'll go to 5,000. I've been hearing little insider people at agencies giving me hints about what they're talking about. But in any case, the potential allowable doses to the public, the legal doses, not the safe doses, the doses that we're now allowed to get are the ones that are needed for the industry to operate. And they've been operating fine from their perspective this way. Now, this will increase it potentially 10 or 100-fold. And if the doses go up, then the allowable releases into air and water would be allowed to go up because they calculate those based on what the people are allowed to be exposed to. And another thing that isn't on our slides, but that is important, is that females and young youth, babies and women, get way more cancer than men do. Men get cancer, men suffer from radiation, but women and kids get more cancer for the same amount of radiation, and the standards are based on the standard man. So 20s or 30s white male, certain weight and height, and what he eats. So we are hoping, as we fight this change in the radiation standards, to demand protecting better, to say, if you're going to change the standards, make them more protective of women, of babies, of not just a subpopulation, but of our life cycle. The future of the species depends on female babies and their genetic material. So we're pushing for better, and maybe we won't get too much worse. And so let's see, I'm taking too long. NRC. So the way that they want to change it is to do away with the scientific basis.
You can go forward, Scott. So, might be the next one.
Yeah, they should be strengthened, not weakened, and if the NRC weakens, it will increase the amount of contamination into air and water, and higher doses mean higher releases. Next.
There you go.
So there's 3 ways that the regulations are being changed. The basis around the world, the basic concept that scientific consensus is that every amount of ionizing radiation leads to some amount of cancer. They don't even pay attention to reduced immunity or to heart disease, which are known to be caused by radiation. They only look at cancer. And so now what they want to say is that not every amount of radiation causes cancer. Let's pretend that there's a threshold below which it's safe, it's okay. So we fought many times over against the concept of below regulatory concern, a level below which you don't have to regulate. And in the United States, we do not have a below regulatory concern legal level. Every amount of radiation in waste needs to be isolated. So what this would do is to say, well, maybe the linear no threshold model isn't good and we'll do away with it so that not every amount of radiation needs to be regulated. They also want to do away with, they want to set a determinate level, some amount of radiation that's okay for us to be exposed to that doesn't need to be regulated. So it's cheaper to clean up and throw stuff into regular garbage and recycle it. And then the third thing is a concept
You
as
can go
low.
forward, Scott.
Well, yeah, it's, okay, is as low as reasonably achievable. It's not a regulatory enforceable law, but the concept, and this is again international, that doses should be kept as low as reasonably achievable because more radiation generally means more cancer. But the ALARA standards are actually incorporating costs. So the industry, the government, the agencies, and the actual industry, they consider how much it costs, and so reasonably achievable incorporates costs. There's a very good, your thing with Arjun, could you say about that? Where Arjun Makhijani talked about as low as reasonably achievable in a lot of detail. Can you just let me?
We have a scholar series, nuclear waste scholar series on our, Hanford Challenge does, on our website. And Arjun Makhijani was on in, I believe, April or May. And on the series to talk about ALARA and to make it more accessible, explaining where it comes from and giving an example of how it didn't work at Los Alamos.
But he is saying that it's important.
Oh, absolutely.
He's saying
Yeah.
it's important to protection of workers and the public. So that's the other thing they want to do away with within the changes. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is expected to propose on July 2nd or 8th now, and we'll have probably 30 days to comment. And so we hope that people will really work on that. Let your legislators know that we oppose weakening of the already inadequate standards, and we need to strengthen them. Okay, next. Am I done with this?
This is the final one.
Oh, the ban. We oppose the DOE's decision the decision that was made in the past to ban nuclear metal being released into commerce and being released into recycling. And so we are telling Congress that we want DOE to continue that ban.
Okay.
Danica?
Hello.
Hello.
I am super happy to be here. I just graduated high school. My name is Danica, and I'm going to talk a little bit. Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit more about these hubs, which are basically these facilities that concentrate all nuclear activities into one location.
You can go to the next slide.
So it's essentially a thinly veiled effort to lure communities into agreeing to nuclear waste dumps, and they increase proliferation risks, by concentrating all the activities into one location, like I just said, which is extremely dangerous. It essentially paves the way for illegal consolidated nuclear waste storage sites, and when host states agree to take in these facilities, they may not know that the waste will likely stay there forever.
You can keep going, Scott. There's a bunch on there. Yeah, that's a good one.
Hubs create new deadly waste streams, which require monitoring forever to keep radioactive and chemical contamination out of our water, wildlife, and resources. They're likely to disproportionately affect communities who already have high-level waste storage facilities in their area. Next slide. So thanks to Linda from Nuclear Free Hawaii for this graphic. It essentially shows what states plan on taking in these nuclear waste hubs, nuclear hubs, sorry. According to Secretary Wright, 28 states have responded to the DOE's request for information on these hubs, And these are, like I just said, they're the states that decided to take these in. Next slide. Sorry. In an effort to speed things up, the Department of Energy adopted a policy that allows new reactors to bypass NRC safety regulations, public comments, and other rules meant to protect people and the environment. This violates the Atomic Energy Act and is very much illegal. Next slide. So again, thank you to Linda with Nuclear Free Hawaii for this graphic. She made that as well, super awesome. All costs involved in building these new nuclear power/weapons facilities need to be factored in, such as waste storage and public health risks. This illustrates the costs and dangers of the nuclear fuel chain necessary for all reactors, including the future ones. Next slide. SMNRs are repeating the failures of the large-scale reactor building relapse during the George W. Bush administration. Only 2 of 3 dozen currently operate right now. NuScale in Idaho was the first SMNR to fall under the current resurgence. Most power would have gone to Utah, but municipalities pulled out of the scheme the last minute because of ballooning cost increases. I'm so sorry. Next slide. Or wait.
Say out loud what SMR is the acronym for.
Small modular nuclear reactors. It's this new technology that they think is gonna solve everything, but it's not. Sorry, I wasn't actually done with the last slide. I had more stuff to say. So these SMRs still do not exist despite federal subsidies. Plant Vogtle in Georgia is the newest nuclear power plant, but due to cost overruns, the price has more than doubled from $15 billion in 2012 to $38 billion to this day. This resulted in record utility shutoffs due to the inability for them to pay because they couldn't afford it. 7,738,128 disconnection notices in 2024. If you want to read this report on Plant Vogtle, I highly encourage it, or you can look at nonukesale.org.
Or Georgia One.
Yeah, Georgia One.
GAWAN.org,
Yeah.
that's our report.
Okay, sorry.
That was okay.
I'm sorry about that, that was my bad.
And it's linked in the report too.
Okay, slide 25, is this it? I don't know, so growing numbers of reactors are applying for subsequent license renewal. For 80 years of operation, which is twice the initial 40-year licenses, if these are approved, the age-related degradation risks of reactor core meltdowns increase substantially, and reactors continue generating more and more metric tons of irradiated fuel. Holtec proposes to restart the Palisades in Michigan, and it's requested $8.3 billion in public bailouts to do so, which ignore the extreme safety risks at the 60-year-old reactor. 3 Mile Island and Duane Arnold in Iowa are also threatened with reopening. These dangerous restarts that don't correct safety deficits and technical flaws need to stop. Nuclear power costs too much, it takes too long, and it makes too much waste. It's just too dirty to continuously keep investing in. Subsidies mask the prohibitive cost of nuclear power, as reported by NEARS. Nuclear power subsidies in the Inflation Reduction Act, $383 billion, are larger than the law's climate spending money that they set aside, which sits at $369 billion. Nuclear power creates more problems than it solves. That's the point that I'm trying to make, and I think that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
And Cece just asked, we can share the link to this presentation so you can look at it
Oh,
later.
great, thank you.
Diane. you have
Oh, I'm sorry.
reprocessing. Oh, oops. No funny.
So reprocessing, which is supposedly going to be part of these nuclear innovation hubs, reprocessing actually makes the nuclear waste problem worse. Reprocessing is a step, it's often incorrectly referred to as recycling, but it isn't really. So I think people here probably know real quick, from mining to milling and conversion and enrichment, all these steps in the fuel chain to get the uranium from the ground, to concentrate the uranium-235, and there's waste all along the way. When the uranium fuel goes into the core of the reactor, nuclear power or weapons reactor, it comes out millions of times hotter. It gives a lethal dose in just seconds or minutes if you're unshielded. So this irradiated fuel, which is referred to as spent fuel, is actually millions of times hotter than the fresh uranium because the uranium splits. And it doesn't matter what design of SMR or advanced reactor or old reactor, if you're getting electricity and energy from the splitting of the uranium, which heats the water and turns the turbines and makes electricity, you're gonna have cesium and strontium and iodine and neptunium. Neutrons will be absorbed and you'll have plutonium and neptunium. You're gonna have all this other stuff which is in the irradiated fuel. So when the fuel is fabricated, they concentrate the uranium-235 into little pellets, stack the pellets in about 12 to 14 foot rods, and you've got a couple hundred of rods into an assembly and a couple hundred assemblies into the core of the reactor, and then the neutrons bang into the uranium, split them, and then make the cesium and the strontium and the iodine, and they're all in these rods, and the heat turns heats the water and turns to steam and turns the turbines, but those rods have all those elements in them. So, and a lot of uranium is still left in there. So the reason they call it recycling is they're saying, oh, well, we'll go in and get that uranium out. But you can't actually recycle anything. All you're doing is taking the rods, and they did this at West Valley, New York. It's the only place in the US where they reprocess commercial fuel, but they also did it in Washington and Georgia and Idaho. They chop the rods up, they dissolve them in chemicals, and they extract the uranium out. And all that stuff that I mentioned is in the liquid and sludge, and it's in a chemical mix. And they have to convert that into a solid to keep it from leaking out into the environment. And in the meantime, there are salt streams, and there are low-level and medium-level wastes that are all created when you're chopping it up to get that uranium and plutonium out. So reprocessing actually ends up taking this stuff that is lethal, unshielded in just a few seconds or minutes, and opens it up. It takes it out of its cladding and makes it into a chemical radioactive mess, which then needs to be isolated for as long as the irradiated fuel would have had to be isolated. So reprocessing that took place, the commercial reprocessing in the US south of Buffalo, had the highest worker exposures in the country for the 6 little years it operated. It took $6 million to build the reprocessing, and it's estimated in 1996 dollars to be 5 to 10 billion to clean up. And that's 96. They haven't given us an estimate in the last, 30 years to know what the current dollars would be to clean it up. So the workers had the highest exposures of all the nuclear power and weapons complex at that site. And the water that was contaminated, which runs from the site through the Seneca Nation of Indians, Cattaraugus Territory, into Lake Erie, right past into the water intakes for Erie County in western New York and both New York and Canada. That water was, during the years of reprocessing, the most radioactive water in the country. And if you look at reprocessing in England and in France, the radioactivity goes out into the ocean. Miles away it can be detected, and in England all the way across to Ireland. Yeah.
But Bill Gates says he can safely reprocess nuclear fuel.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. Anyway, the reprocessing has been a disaster. I'm still going back to Western New York 4 times a year to the public meetings. We're trying to push and fight, and Scott's slide, he showed the amount of money they give to clean up. We're still fighting to clean up the 6 years of reprocessing that took place. And so it is not to be repeated, and nobody should think that it's recycling and closing the cycle. Was that the last one?
That's
it.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
And it costs a lot. Yeah.
have two asks for the Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board, the DNFSB. One is to just maintain full funding of 45 million. So that's,
Look at the fact that that has an M by it.
million.
Just do it.
Yeah, it's like change, you know, they have a change in their pocket. But there's also a fairly complicated ask to recommend that at least 3 nominees to the White House confirm and qualified new board members to ensure a quorum for the board. The DNFSB has 5, is set up to have 5 board members. Right now, they only have 1. And this is largely due to the current administration's refusal to appoint any more board members. So that means that they don't have a quorum for the board, so they can't really do their job. And that's worrisome. So maybe this week we can focus on getting a quorum for the board, and that would have to, it would be better if it was a Republican senator. So maybe we'll think of Idaho senators, because they're Republican and they are familiar, you know, they're for nuclear safety. But you know, anytime it comes up, we need to get more funding. And you know, the DNFSB is kind of an independent board. I mean, their oversight comes from the NRC, not from DOE. And so, they focus just on defense nuclear facilities, which is not commercial reactors, just bomb plant, Cold War, pit production, current pit production, and other sites, mainly doing defense weapons production. And there's, you know, there's just a few sites that have DNFSB sites across the country, and if your site is one of them, there are weekly reports or monthly reports, depending on how big the site is. You can go through, and it's very, very interesting. And they have site representatives that come and make they just write a page, you know, about what they observed, and it's very, very telling. Sometimes, you know, they're not afraid to announce if there's been an accident, or if the board thinks that something's not being built safe enough, they'll make a recommendation. But they don't have any regulatory ability, and they don't have any. They can't attack the funding in any way. So really, all they can do is make a recommendation to DOE, and DOE has to respond, but they could respond, well, we don't think so. And yeah, so it's independent analysis, and it's that we really need. It's a glimpse that we wouldn't normally get from outside of DOE, and so we need to ensure full funding for them. And as an example.
And this is in the report too, the full
Yeah.
report.
Yeah.
But they can't make recommendations without a quorum, so that's why. So there's like the site reps who are writing these reports you can access online. They're really helpful, we use them all the time. And then there's the members, and because they don't have enough members to have a quorum, they can't make recommendations, hold hearings, or like do the like higher level oversight. So it really just makes sense.
Do they still have staff?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's that 45 million that they need.
We have a meeting with them tomorrow morning.
Yeah, but they do still have staff, Dee, and they're still technically good staff.
So these are just, and
Yeah.
it's easy to find their site, and their site is fairly easy to get
And
around.
it's by site, so if you want to look up you just have to go check at the site and see if there's any reports, and then they're great because sometimes they're reporting stuff that you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah, so like for example, a couple of years ago, or a while back, DOE came up with this idea to increase pit production at Los Alamos, and they wanted to build a new facility, and DOE was ignoring the fact that it was in a seismic zone, and when the DNFSB kind of caught on to it, they realized that it was going to require a 75-foot deep by quarter acre or half acre chunk of concrete to make it safe. I mean, that was just millions of cubic yards of concrete. And so the DNFSB insisted, and they kept saying, you know, it's a 7.0 earthquake would bring the building down. And so they basically stopped the new pit production facility a while back. Now it forced them to kind of so now they're forced to upgrade their existing building, and yeah, so that's.
What would happen if there were a 7.0 earthquake with the existing building?
Trouble. Yeah. The highest impact, the highest risk is a seismic event with a fire at the building. So they're afraid that it's going to shake something loose and cause a fire. And then there's other issues like that where DOE refuses to have active safety. So if there is a fire, they want to turn off all the fans, close the doors, stuff like that. And DOE is just dragging their feet or refusing to do that. They just want to basically have it passive, like the last person out of the burning building, please close the door. That's what they're doing. Okay, so I guess we're ready for some questions.
Yeah.
Any questions for any of us here?
And there's people in the room cannot answer some too.
Ellen?
About the plutonium pit production, there's been some changes in how many Trump wants to have and where they're supposed to be. Could you explain what's happening
We
with that?
can, but the Peace Pod's gonna go
Oh,
over
okay,
that.
all right,
So just for time, let's let
Thank you.
cleanup
Okay.
questions happen here.
all right.
Mary Leah?
A couple of things. So in terms of changing the radiation standards from what's already, as you mentioned, inadequate to worse than inadequate, that's going to cut across all of the nuclear weapons and the ANA Peace Pod issues and the cleanup and nuclear renaissance issues. I know that we're all resource challenged as individual groups and as a network. That's just the truth of the matter these days for right now. But I do think a collaborative report, nothing terribly fancy or expensive, we all know this stuff, but to put it together could have a lifetime of use in our individual groups as we move forward.
So you're saying a collaborative ANA sites, like how this will change will affect our sites?
Peace Pod, Green Pod, and other groups that are working on it, whether they're officially part of ANA or not, to put together just sort of a primer that groups can use to educate their members.
Okay.
And so whatever level we're advocating for, whether they're at a city council because of something specific maybe going to happen in that city, or whether we're in DC, we have that sort of basic go-to information, which then enables other people in our group who don't have it memorized to use it. I think it wouldn't just be a report that goes on the shelf. I think it would be used.
Okay, I would be glad to work on that with anybody who's
Yeah.
interested. And I would ask everyone here, do you know the website that we've got a website for Protect Better, and you can go sign up at that website, and then as soon as it gets really going,
Yeah.
then there's gonna be a place there and we'll
Yeah.
send notices out too.
Better.org.
Is it protectbetter.org? So you can
Yeah.
actually go there on your phone right now and sign up, even though we don't have it
Yeah.
all fully.
It'll probably launch this week, but
Yeah.
But you're saying, are you saying a collaborative report specifically about the changes in the radiation exposure standard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is gonna cut across
Everything.
everything. And
Yeah.
so therefore it would suddenly be useful to everybody.
Yeah.
And that's when that's my threshold for thinking about the work of putting together a report, is whether it's something that would actually get used by everybody. And that's an issue, I think, that will.
Okay.
Well, I'll just say briefly, so this coalition that we've been forming, there were like 40 organizations that signed on to a letter before the rulemaking even
Right.
started to express our concern. And then subset of those groups, we've been meeting several times
Yeah.
a week. And yeah, pretty soon, I think we would love to invite lots of other groups to be part of that and to take different roles. And there is a group of us that's been working on like drafting comments.
Yeah.
The
yeah.
comment period's open in July. They keep pushing it back, but right now it's, I
Right,
think, July
right.
6th. But I think a report to go along with that, like we intend not just to file comments, but to create kind of a public campaign.
Yes.
And that's where,
Yeah.
like, we want people to understand, this isn't just like one place that's gonna be impacted, but
Right.
everybody. Yeah.
Right, right. And so that's another bird that could feed, would be people use it for comments.
And
so,
speaking
yeah.
of everywhere, ALARA is a concept that's used in the doctor's office. So medical providers and patients could be impacted if that is wiped out. The whole concept is to keep the doses as reasonably achievable for everybody. So it's something that could even affect us in our very often referred to medical radiation procedures,
Yeah.
as well as the industry and other, I mean, really nuclear powered weapons are the main industries with radiation, but others could also be impacted. So I would be willing to do a fact sheet report. I don't know, is that something you would maybe edit or something, or?
I could help.
Okay.
It certainly does not need to come from ANA, but it could. But there's a procedure in terms of Peace Pod and Green Pod having monthly calls. And there's a way to work together, bring in the coalition, have a couple of authors. I'm not talking something that's 40 pages that nobody will read. I'm talking something that's half a dozen or so and has the bullet points so that everyone's group's members, et cetera, get it.
Yeah, I think we hope to have on this website like short videos and stories. So in addition to like a
Yes.
written report, if a bunch
Yeah.
of groups want to just say in like
Yeah,
30 seconds why this matters in Livermore or why this matters, wherever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just a time check, we've got 10 minutes before we switch.
so yeah, please, other questions.
Well, I just wanted to say that I agree with what's already been said concerning, but I would like, and people, speak for myself in the healthcare field, to see the data, the breakdown from cancer, heart disease, whatever medical issues that people are suffering from this breakdown, to let them know, oh, I fit in this category from age, male, female, black, white, Jew, Gentile. What the data will show that will hit somebody's heartstring.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that-
Including in all the information in the fact sheet with the data spelled out.
So the generational radiation impact project kind of information that Mary Olson has put together, it's grip.org, I think. But anyway,
Yeah.
we can work to incorporate that, 7 little girls will get cancer for every man that gets cancer at X amount of radiation.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
X amount of age, stage, whatever.
Yeah. Hey, are we done early?
Can I ask you a question? This is my first DC days in this group. I've done lobbying and stuff a lot, but like we have, quite a few asks. So I'm just curious, like when people are, doing a visit, are we, like you mentioned, like there might be strategy, like we're meeting with Republicans from Idaho, so we're gonna really focus on, appointees, like, I'm just, you know, as we're planning together, I'm sure the teams will talk about this before meetings, but,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just curious, like, how you think about that generally.
Well, so generally speaking, we've already boiled it down
Right.
to come up to with these asks, but it isn't thought that you're going to do every ask in every meeting. That's actually like a fire hose for them, and then nothing gets done.
Right.
So within your organization, and partly these caucus meetings that happen at lunch, you decide what's important, what are the important meetings for you to sign up for a specific ask. And then your team leader is a deity. Not in real life, but it is actually the team leader's job to say this person is on this committee, and so these asks are relevant. And then you will have an all-important team meeting at some point before the meeting. And that is incredibly important, be early for it, because that's where it's choreographed. These are the things to ask this member of Congress or this agency that are, who's going to do, you're going to go first and do this ask. And so it's choreographed out in the team meeting. And so that's how it is. They all come out of the pot. Nothing gets asked that isn't in the pot. But which ones for which meeting get winnowed that way. Within your own group, what's important, and then the team leader and the pre-meeting.
Yeah, and part of that is you'll have the name of the staff members and what they do that you're meeting with.
Yeah.
So you focus it on that also.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone from Georgia One has any like updates on how the report's been received, but I'm just curious since it was new last year, if like any impacts it's had and how people are reacting.
Well, I would say for us, last year we circulated, we had Glenn Carroll here with us last year, and so she circulated with some of her volunteers from her organization to all of the elected officials here. We also have mailed the report out to all of the governors of all of the states in our nation.
Wow.
And to the point where we got, well, I was sent to New York State to talk about the impacts of the cautionary tale of Plant Vogel and what it meant, because obviously that governor is trying to.
She didn't read the report.
Yes. Well, it wasn't for her to read. The report really was for the state legislatures, because what we're trying to do is put a moratorium and start a nationwide moratorium in all of these states where they are proposing new nuclear industry, whether it's reactors or data centers or whatever the case may be. And so we have been pretty successful in New York State to get most of their legislators to sign on to this. So when they vote, hopefully we have a good report on this, but that report has been all over the nation right now, and so we're very excited about it. You all can go to our website, gawan.org, to get it. But yeah, we're having some good success with it, and we're excited about some of the impacts that are coming from it.
Because this is from a while ago, let me just say this out loud if you work on nuclear reactor stuff. California passed a prohibition on any new nuclear reactors.
Yeah.
So if you're working on it, now there's a huge fight to keep it in place, oh my God. But if you want to see some language that passed a long time ago, it's like, so your state could pass it too. Let me commend that.
Yeah, and thanks for doing this report, just because once something gets bigger, it's like, hey, we have some news for you.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, a lot of work. We might be done early.
Can I just throw one more thing in then? Little late for now, but we can circulate this by email. As somebody who goes through the National Nuclear Security Administration budget request to Congress every year, there is the DOE document. there is a wonderful line in it about cleanup that specifically says that the Department of Energy is the biggest cleanup project in the nation. And as we're lobbying for money, that's, I think, a very good line. DOE says this is the biggest cleanup project in the nation, which is an admission, if you look at the other side of the coin, it's the biggest mess in the nation. Yeah.
All right, I think
I think it's on page
probably
6 in the
start
summary.
switching over.
Thank you, guys.